all my digital ministry secrets. Here we go. Hi everyone, I'm Reverend Jim Keat, the Director of Online Innovation at Convergence, the digital minister at Riverside, and just a human being with an interest in the internet and church and stuff. So I'm going to share some ideas with you. This is a piece that I put together for a group. I recorded a thing, and I thought I would just share the video here on my channel so you can all watch it as well. So yeah, all my secrets. This is if I had to just boil it down into like however many minutes this video is, this is what I think you should know. So watch the video, and now you know it. Enjoy. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about virtual is not going anywhere, the future of hybrid. Now, to start, we're going to talk about three specific areas. We're going to talk about organs, we're going to talk about books, and we're going to talk about youth ministry. Now, I know you might be thinking, wait a minute, I thought we were talking about virtual church stuff. Yes, we are, and we will get there, but we're going to begin by talking about organs. Now, the organ first began making its way into churches around 900 CE. We don't really know exactly why. There's a lot of history that kind of gets muddied, which history often does, but it appears that the organ was first used for ceremonial purposes. A lot of people seem to think that it was first placed by the front door of the church, and it was like the call to worship, so people outside would hear it and come in kind of a thing, and now we move it kind of a little further inside, probably for lots of good reasons. But it started in around 900. But it wasn't until the 1400s, 500 years later, that the use of organs was well established in monastic churches and cathedrals throughout Europe. So the Western Church really began adopting the organ by the 1400s. And it wasn't until the 1500s that what we now know as a modern organ really was invented, constructed, and utilized. From 900 to 1500, 600 years to go from this new idea to what now seems like it's everywhere in our churches. Do you see where I'm going yet? Okay. Now let's talk about books. Really, I want to talk about the question, who owns a book? Chances are a lot of us own a book. I have books right behind me. This is not a Zoom background. This is actually, a real bookshelf. But who owns a book? Who owns a book? It's commonplace now, but let's go back in time to this guy, Gutenberg. Before Gutenberg made his mark with his movable type printing press, owning a book was incredibly rare. People did it, but they had to be written by hand. The whole process of mass producing them was limited, to say the least. So who owns a book was such a rare commodity, but after the printing press made it possible, suddenly books could be much more widely accessed. One moment changed everything, taking what seemed like this impossibility to become commonplace. Can we imagine our churches without books? I mean, yeah, now we do everything on a phone, right? I get it. But still, how many of your church pews have one of these in the back of it? And the way that we orient ourselves, the Word made flesh. We often think of this little invention, which started from a dude named Gutenberg, or at least was amplified by a dude named Gutenberg. Let's be clear. And third, let's continue this talking about youth ministry. Youth ministry, as we know it, really was invented in the 1930s and the 1940s. This was post-World War I. Young men in their 20s were returning home, and they didn't want to be left out of church leadership, so they began to focus on youth fellowship. And we see the invention of parachurch organizations like Young Life, which is what you see pictured here, one of the first Young Life gatherings. And that eventually evolved and spun and morphed into what we now know as youth ministry until 100 years later, you can get a college degree in youth ministry and a full-time job as a youth pastor. And this today doesn't even seem like anything novel or new. It's just, oh yeah, youth ministry. That's just a part of the church, right? But just 100 years ago, it was a brand new concept, something invented for the first time. Once upon a time, all of these things, the organ, books, youth ministry, we could list a billion other things. Once upon a time, these were brand new ideas. And now we see them as established institutions in this ongoing experiment called church. Is digital ministry any different? We are finding ourselves splashing, swimming, hopefully not drowning in these waters of digital ministry. It feels new to so many of us, faith leaders, congregants, our spaces. But could it just be that we're in one of those introduction to the organ, Gutenberg's printing press, invention of youth ministry moments, where this thing feels new, but at some point in the future, it's going to be just an established part of what it means to be church? That's what I'm betting on. I think that what we have been pushed into is the inevitable future. And how I like to think about it when it comes to specifically hybrid, this combination of different worlds merging together, I think that going to church will be like going to the beach. Let's talk about this for a minute. If you what is it, September now? Maybe your beach days are done, but we're going to go one last time to the beach this right now. Here we go. So here's what I think the future of the church will be. There will be different ways to experience it. When you go to the beach, sometimes you just want to be there on the sand. You just want to set up your chair, feel the sun, read a book, open the cooler you snuck with you, maybe throw a frisbee, whatever it is. You're there for the sand portion of it. That's what you want to do. Other people might come to the beach for the water. They came to dive in deep and swim and explore what unknown depths are below the surface and hopefully not run into too many sharks. They came for that particular experience. And others, well, they want the combination of them both. They want that overlap where the two merge together right at the shore. That's where my 2-year-old son typically lives, right there where the waves are crashing against the sand. He just will plop down time and time again. It is adorable and hilarious. But as you can see, what I'm saying is the way we experience the beach, it's not all one experience. And I think the way we experience church must also be similar. Some people will just want that in-person experience. Others will just want, for various reasons, accessibility, whatever it might be, the online experience. And others are going to want to be at that merger of the two where they overlap one on top of the other. We have to recognize the future of this thing called the church in these online spaces. It will include all of these at times as distinct entities. The problem becomes if we try to make everything hybrid, you typically end up ruining a lot of things. Here's how I think about this. When my wife was pregnant with our first son, the one who's 2 now, she began eating dates because that's the thing you eat when you're pregnant. And I started eating dates because I snack on whatever's in the house. And I'd never really eaten dates prior to this point, and I discovered dates are delicious. You might know this because you've probably eaten a date. But then one day she said, "Would you like some peanut butter on your dates?" Interesting. I like peanut butter a lot. I'll eat it by the spoonful. And I've learned that dates are delicious. I guess I'll try it, but is it going to be okay with it? She convinced me. I tried it, and it turns out peanut butter on dates is delicious. This is an example of 2 things that are good by themselves that become even better when you bring them together. So I started thinking, what else could I put peanut butter on that might taste good? I like watermelon. Let's put peanut butter on watermelon. That one was not a good idea, at least for my taste buds. All this to say, sometimes there are things that are really good by themselves. And sometimes they become even better when we merge them and bring them in that hybrid space. But if it makes it worse... So I think that the future of the church is going to be this, where we have multiple modalities, multiple entry points, multiple spaces. And to me, this is what it means to be a hybrid church, where you have different points of access and experience, some things just being the in-person, some things just being the online, and some things being that overlap of the two. If you try to put peanut butter on everything, a lot of things might end up tasting gross. But sometimes you'll put peanut butter on dates, and it's delicious. Now let's zoom in a bit though to the beach. I think if we zoom in, we actually notice a couple nuances. We need to recognize when we are doing that combination, that hybridity, which is a fun word to say, hybridity. When you're doing this hybrid experience, really we have to recognize that we will be privileging someone. the online community first or the in-person community first? Who are we designing the experience for, and then who are we offering access to? Chances are most of our Sunday morning worship services are designed with the in-person audience first, and then we stick some cameras up and find ways to make it accessible to the online community. That's not entirely a bad thing, but I think there's ways that we can do that more intentionally. But it's just an awareness we need to have. Who are we designing this for first, and then who are we giving access to second? It's very hard to make it a pure equity between the two, although I think we can do it. You can probably do it. I bet you can. I want to hear about it. So I just want us to be aware of that. What kinds of spaces are we making? Do we have these online spaces, these in-person spaces, these hybrid spaces, and what does that hybrid space actually mean? So thinking about all of these hybrid things, these hybrid realities, where this thing called the church is going, the ways in which we need to recognize the distinct differences. Let me just give a few examples. In-person stuff we know well. That's what the church has been doing for 2,000 years, of gathering in physical spaces together. The online things are what's new, and we see it though. Zoom Church is a good example of those online things, when churches are using Zoom by itself, no in-person gathering. Everyone's on Zoom, whether it's a church council meeting, because seriously, who wants to have church council meetings in person anymore? They should always be on Zoom. Worship services, Bible studies at Riverside. We have a morning prayer group that's been going strong for now 2.5 years, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. on Zoom. What are the ways in which we can use this platform as an online only experience? But then that combination is where it gets interesting. Like I said, a lot of our Sunday morning worship services are designed in person first, and we find ways to make them accessible to the online audience. It's a hybrid experience, but we're privileging the in-person group. If you don't believe me, just take a look at the language you use when you lead communion. Who is that experience designed for? This is my current challenge at Riverside, which is a fun one. That's the beauty of this brave new world. But then what about things that are online first? Have you ever thought about making something online first and then giving in-person access second? This one's a bit harder to wrap my mind around because this is a brave new world for us all. But one way that we do it at Riverside, every Sunday after worship, we have virtual coffee hour, which is on Zoom. So it's for our online congregation primarily, but then we find ways to make it accessible to the in-person congregants, which sometimes is as simple as having, a big screen in a room where people can eavesdrop on the conversation. We have a sermon talk back with the preacher every Sunday. So the in-person congregants sometimes want to hear that, but we're privileging the online congregation first. And then we also record the audio from that, and then we produce that into a sermon talk back podcast called After the Amen, which again is a way to make it accessible to the in-person congregants and the wider world who want to hear the sermon talk back. But that's an example of an online first activity that then is given in-person access second. This is all ways to think about this experiment called the church, but more than anything, I just want us to remember that there are different ways of experiencing the beach, and there will be different ways of experiencing church. The future of the church can't just be to make everything online. Find a hybrid solution for everything. Throw a camera in every room. That's just gonna muddy the waters, and it's gonna just take what could have been good and make it less good for everybody. But I think the goal is always to say, how can we be intentional about what we're doing? How can we have various ways for people to experience all the things that we're doing, which might mean if you have your in-person Bible study, maybe then you have an online Bible study. You don't have to suddenly make it a combined experience if you don't have the capacity, the technology to do that. Maybe you move towards that, and let's be honest, in the future, the technology is going to become much more accessible, much more affordable, but we're not entirely always there yet. We've all probably been on the Zoom meetings where everyone else is in the room and there's a few people on Zoom, and you're like, hey, don't forget about me. I'm still here. Can you see me? Can you hear? Yeah, not fun. Anyway, I digress into personal therapy. So let's plant our feet on this world of the hybrid church, recognizing it's going to have very different experiences. But the reality is, specifically around Sunday morning worship, we're probably all looking at ways to make it accessible for people outside of the room. At Riverside, most of our Sunday morning worshipers are not in the room. We've been averaging lately about a 60-40 split. 60% of our worshiping congregation are worshiping online, and 40% on average are in the room. So as we live in this reality of a hybrid church, what are some tips, tricks, and best practices? I decided, of course, to give you 10 commandments for the hybrid church. All right. Thank you, Charleston Heston. Here we go. Number 1, keep it simple. It's so easy to make things incredibly complicated. I think it's very important when you're doing anything in these hybrid ways to keep it simple. The more complicated you make it, the more dependent it becomes on you or whatever small number of people know how to plug in all the wires and push all the buttons. Keep it simple. Start simple. So that multiple people can try it, run it, access it, and B, so that it can just succeed in its starting point. And then you can always add more complexities once you got this thing done. Keep it simple. Whatever your starting point is, keep it simple. All right, that's a long rant for 3 words. Number 2, make eye contact. Oh, this one I think is essential. And I think is going to be a thing that right now might feel different, uncomfortable, but in the future will become normal. When we are leading our in-person gatherings, it's very natural to look around at all the people gathered in the room. If you're leading an online-only gathering, it's very natural to always be looking at the camera. But when you have those 2 congregations combined, how do you do both? Now, the danger is that we ignore the people online and we only look at the people in the room, which means I'm never looking at the camera and I'm just looking at my messy basement because I'm actually in my basement. It just looks like an office. And I'm looking over here at this pile of boxes, looking over here at this piano bench that I have sitting on a shelf, but I'm never looking at you. It's so easy if we have a hybrid experience to look at the people in the room and never look at the people online. So how do we be intentional about looking into the camera? Maybe I think it does a couple things when you do. It indicates to the people online that you see them, you recognize them, you know they are there. And to the people in the room, it reminds them that they aren't the only people experiencing this moment. There are other people as well. So make eye contact. I think you should spend most of your time looking at most of the people and some of your time looking at all of the people. That's a general rule of thumb I have, which also means you need to have a way of understanding where are the people. That's a whole other conversation. But number 2 for my 10 commandments is make eye contact. See? Like this, right now. Not like this. Like this. Number 3, provide a digital bulletin. We often have these things printed or made available for the people in the room, but is there an online version? This might be having hymn lyrics and responsive readings on screen so people can follow along with what's happening, or it might just be making a PDF that's available for people to download from your website or wherever, and you can just say, hey, go to trcnyc.org/bulletins to download today's bulletin. That's where Riverside's bulletins are. We have a big long list of every bulletin from the past 3 or 4 years up there, I think. But make it available. Make it so that the people worshiping online have the ability to participate fully, not just feel like they're watching church happen from, a crack in the window. How can they be immersed as much as possible? And this is one simple way. Number 4, recruit digital greeters. Now, this one, again, we think that our greeters in our in-person spaces, they're very commonplace, and we understand the important role they play. I mean, if someone walks into your church and no one even looks at them or says hello, what are the chances of them A, feeling welcome there, or B, ever coming back again? This is pretty much a church 101 for us now. So we understand the need to have ushers, greeters, people who are saying, hello, welcome, so glad you're here. Here's a bulletin. When it comes to these online spaces, I think that it's even more important to have digital greeters than it is to have the in-person greeters. Here's why. Maybe first, here's how we look at this at Riverside. Our digital greeters are those who, for us, we broadcast through YouTube Live, and then we do virtual coffee hour on Zoom after worship. So we're in YouTube Live, so the live chat is kind of our place to say hello. And we always start by asking general questions. Let us know where you're joining us from. And anytime someone shares where they're from, anytime someone says anything in that initial start of worship, before worship's beginning, during the prelude and all that stuff, we have digital greeters who are then welcoming them. Just saying, hey, Jacqueline, so glad you're here. Ruben, great to see you again this week. People who are recognizing that someone said something, they're hearing it, and they're responding back. Now, I think that's important, specifically online, because imagine the experience of you decide to type something into the little computer, push the button, and let the world see it. and no one says anything. What are the chances that you'll ever want to say anything in that live chat space again? It diminishes very quickly. But the minute someone immediately responds to you, you feel seen and heard and welcomed and participated. I think that's where in these online spaces that can already feel so anonymous and distancing, digital greeters are more important than ever. I know people who do Zoom church, and the beauty there is you see people pop up on screen with their name and you can greet them by name. Don't just say, it's so great to see all these people. Start saying the names. When people hear their name, it makes them feel like they are, it not just makes them feel welcomed, it means they are welcomed. It's a radical difference. This one is, as you can see, very important. Okay, let's go on to number 5. Don't hide the camera. Now, this kind of touches back to eye contact and all that stuff I said, but I think it's very, very easy for us to think in our physical spaces that the camera should kind of be tucked away, out of sight, out of mind. No. I think the camera should be visible. The camera should have some prominence, specifically because the camera is the stand-in for the online congregation. That device is the representative of what could be dozens, hundreds, thousands of people who are participating in this experience. I think it can be as much as then encouraging people to engage with it. It's hard to engage with something you can't see, like passing of the peace, whatever it might be to the camera. How can the camera be present as a reminder of what it is we're experiencing? I have one friend, Jason Moore. He wrote a book called Both And, which is a great book you should all read. He encourages churches to take a whiteboard on the back of that camera that's visible and write a number on it. And the number is the number of people who worshiped online the previous week, so that we can truly make the connection to this camera represents this many human beings. What a concept. All right, number 6 of my 10 commandments. I think we all need to sit in their seat. I think it's important that for those of us who are leading worship, we get very caught up in probably leading from the physical space. I think you should spend at least one Sunday a quarter worshiping online. And I think if you do this, you'll realize, oh, that's what it's like. Oh, that eye contact thing really is important. Here's what I think, though. If you spend at least one Sunday a quarter worshiping online, the next Sunday, when you're back from the physical space leading again, you will lead it very differently, because you will have just a greater empathy and awareness of what the whole congregation is experiencing. Number 7. Don't be afraid to try something new. Now, this can be a tough one in the church world because we're afraid to do almost anything new, or there's so many barriers to doing anything new. But when it comes to this world of digital ministry, hybrid church, we're still figuring this out. It's important to try things and even to fail things, specifically to fail fast at things so that we can learn from it and then try again. But don't be afraid to try something new. If anything, I think that this moment we've been finding ourselves in is an invitation to bring our congregations into just a theory of change, recognizing we can't just be stuck stasis in the way things have been, but we have to always be moving, evolving. If you're in the Reformed tradition, it's reformed and always being reformed. The sails are open, the wind of God is blowing. Don't be afraid to see where this thing might go. We like our anchors, but it's time to open those sails and just see what could happen. Don't be afraid to try something new. And then evaluate it, see what happens. I like to try new things when I know there's like a built-in kind of end point. For example, we're going to try a new video platform, an alternative to Zoom. It's called Alter Live. And we're going to try it for our virtual coffee hour on our homecoming Sunday. Just that one Sunday. And if it's horrible, yeah, that's a horrible idea. Let's never do that again. But if it goes great, maybe we'll start trying it a little more. Or Advent is a good season to try something because it's 4 weeks long. It begins and it ends and you can do a thing and you can evaluate it. Or Lent is a good season, 7-ish weeks long. Or the summer can be a good season when we have a couple months to try something out. The point being, try something new, evaluate it, and then decide whether or not or what aspects of it you're going to keep doing. That's very essential to the world of hybrid church. But maybe even more would be number 8. Don't compare yourselves to others. We can learn from others, and we should, but don't compare yourselves to them. Oh, they do it so much better. Oh, their whatever is so cool. Oh, they're trained, they're blah, 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 blah. No. Everyone has to start. Let me see. I think it's over here. Aha. The only way, focus, come on camera. The only way to get from A to Z is one letter at a time. You can't skip. You got to start here and then do B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, V, W, X, Y, Z. You got to start where you are and keep moving forward. When we compare ourselves to others, we're often comparing ourselves to someone who's at a completely different point in their trial and failure experience. So start where you are, keep moving forward, learn from others, but don't compare yourselves to them. All right, number 9, authenticity is more important than production value. Now, this one, we can get caught up in the production value, get caught up in, slick cameras and lighting and editing and all these things, but being your authentic self will always be most important. And the reality is, this is true. Oh, I forgot to show you the slide. See what I mean? Production value, authenticity. That was a good slide to mess the production value up, right? Authenticity has always been the most important aspect in this spectrum of authenticity to production value. In our in-person services, in our online spaces, being authentically who you are, rather than being worried about the lights and the things and the this and the that and the props and the whatever. Be authentically you. That's always what people connect with. The production value is good and important, and having a good, nice camera and good lighting and a fancy microphone. Nothing against all that stuff, but none of that is what's essential. That stuff is what can add to what you're doing. But if you're not your authentic self, we need to start the whole conversation over again. And number 10, I'm going to cheat and go back to the beginning. Keep it simple. It's so important for us to remember it can very easily get complex, very easily get out of control, very easily can just feel like there's so many things to do, which is why in this world of the future of hybrid church, this virtual is not going anywhere. It's so important to always remember to keep it simple. The minute we make it too complex, we run the risk of leaving people too far behind. Oh, I can't even participate because I don't know the language, or I don't have all the right social app, program, Oculus, whatnot. No. Keep it simple. Because there can be a lot of things. It can get really complicated really fast. There can be so many things that you feel like you need to know or do in this world of digital ministry. There's all sorts of just editing and platforms and apps and this thing to download and that thing to learn. And now you're not only a pastor, but you're a media producer and you're a YouTuber and you're a TikToker and you're a podcaster and you're a social media personer and somewhere you're still a human in there. So in the middle of all the things, the good news is you don't have to do all the things, because the honest truth is you can't do all the things. You need to be intentional about the things you choose to do, that you're called to do. Which leads me to a story I want to tell you. This is a story about a guy named John Kenneth Galbraith. Maybe you know who John Kenneth Galbraith is. I don't know much about him other than that he was an economist in, I think, the 80s and 90s. I don't know, because this story is kind of about him, but the story is really about Emily Gloria Wilson, John Kenneth Galbraith's housekeeper. Now, one day, John Kenneth Galbraith returned home from a day of meetings, busy stuff, doing important things, and he said, I am tired. I'm going to my study. I'm going to take a nap. Emily, please hold all my calls. I need some rest. Okay. He lays down. Sure enough, the phone rings. Hello, this is John Kenneth Galbraith's house. How can I help you? I would like to speak to Mr. Galbraith. I'm sorry, he's unavailable at this time. No, I don't think you understand. I need to speak to John Kenneth Galbraith. I'm sorry, you don't understand. He's unavailable. This is President Lyndon B. Johnson, and I would like to talk to John Kenneth Galbraith. I'm sorry, Mr. President, but no. Click. Don't you like this woman already? John Kenneth Galbraith wakes up from his nap. Did I have any calls? Oh yes, there was this one. John Kenneth Galbraith called Lyndon B. Johnson. Apparently everyone in the story has 3 names. And Lyndon B. Johnson says, "Who was that woman? And can I hire her?" Now, I don't know if this story actually happened, but regardless, it's still true. Some things are true even if they didn't actually happen. That's a whole other conversation about the Bible we can have another day. But the point of this story is the power of saying no. In ministry, it seems like we avoid this word. Like for some reason, we're not allowed to say the word. We feel like we just have to say yes to everyone and everything and all the ideas, and suddenly our job becomes to just help all those ideas happen. Now, there's truth to that because the goal is to, the kingdom of priests, the community of all of us together, and how do we, as a community, share and do the work? It's not just one person. But you can't say yes to everything. And in the world of digital ministry, hybrid church, online, everything, you can't do everything. You need to be intentional about what you say yes to. And in order to do that, you have to be intentional about what you say no to. That, I believe more than anything, is the future of hybrid. It's faith leaders having the ability to be intentional about saying yes and saying no. Let your yes be yes and let your no be no. We've heard that somewhere, I think. Wasn't talking about this context, but it still applies. I also think this comes to this understanding. How to run a marathon. Now, I'm actually training for a marathon right now as I'm recording this. I think by the time you watch this, I'll have run my marathon. I'm running it in mid-September, early September, so I'll let you know how I did later. But to run a marathon, you can't go out sprinting. People often start running a marathon way too fast, and then they hit a wall, they call it, usually by mile 20. I've experienced that in some marathons. And you I can't move, my legs, do you work anymore? The only way to run a marathon is to pace yourself so that you finish. Also, it's not always easy or fun, but you can do it, especially if you've put in the intentional training, and you can be proud of what you accomplish. And the most important thing I find when it comes to running a marathon is you don't run it alone. You have this cloud of witnesses running with you, cheering you on, fueling the entire 26.2 mile journey. There is work for you to do, but you don't have to do it all by yourself. Now, if you're not a runner, that metaphor kind of fell flat. But the point is we are in this together. The future of hybrid will be saying yes, saying no, but more than any of that, it's going to be the ways in which we do it together. Because all of us, not a single individual, all of us as a community of leaders are, I think, the only future this movement can have. So, virtual is not going anywhere. This stuff is sticking around. In fact, it's been around for quite a while. The pandemic just kind of brought us all into the reality of oh yeah, I think it was 12 years ago or so, I tweeted, virtual's not the opposite of real, it's the opposite of physical. They're both real. Did you follow that? Virtual's not the opposite of real, it's the opposite of physical. They're both real. We've all experienced that now more than ever these past few years, and I think we'll continue to experience it, hopefully not just out of desperation, out of a Band-Aid we need to stick to fix something, but out of an adaptive cultural change that our congregations can be a part of for the future of the church, the future of the world around us, the future of the human beings, the people that make this thing worthwhile. So it's easy to think about hybrid church, virtual church, digital church, and just to think about technology, cameras, lights, cold stuff. But it's all about the people. It's all about the people who are leading it and the people who are experiencing it. Let's always keep all of the people in mind first. All right. I think that's my rant for today. If you have questions, you can get a hold of me. I'm pretty easy to find online. You can email me at jim@convergenceus.org or jkeat@trcnyc.org. Those are the two worlds I spend a lot of time living in. Or just Google me. You'll probably find one of two Jim Keats, me or my dad. Probably me. He's not as present on the internet. Well, that's not entirely true. Anyway, okay. See you all later. Thanks for hanging out. Look forward to where this conversation takes us now and in the future. Bye. What'd you think? First, hey, you're watching to the very end of the video. Hey, you're awesome. Way to go. Leave a comment. Let me know thoughts, questions, comments, other ideas you would add, and let's have a conversation there. Chitty chat, type. And next week, new video. You know the drill. Seriously, you're still watching. You are amazing. Yes, you. Yeah, you know you're awesome. And now I know you're awesome too. All right. See you later.